How do you spend your time? Does your schedule reflect the life you dream of living? Does your calendar represent the person you aspire to be? Many of us simply go with the flow, allowing life to simply happen to us. We let others dictate our schedules. We fill our days with distraction, or we end up finding ourselves living out someone else's script. What if, instead of hoping for the best, you took an intentional approach to designing your time? I'm not talking about an overly planned or mechanical life. I'm talking about intentionally structuring your time in a way that aligns with who you are and who you want to be. Whether it's rekindling relationships through regular date nights, or improving finances through regular planning sessions, or maintaining health through regular exercise. Time blocking is an essential tool for anyone seeking to live a vibrant, meaningful life. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about the practice of time blocking, how it can help in your personal life and in your work life, and have an interesting discussion about whether time blocking increases personal freedom and spontaneity or challenges it. We promise this will be an interesting conversation and help you make one more step forward to becoming unstuck. See you soon. Hi, welcome back everyone to the Spacemakers podcast season 3, where we are talking about how to make space to get unstuck for a surprising second act. And I'm here with my good friend and co-host Matt Bain. Welcome back.
Thank you, Dan. I'm very pleased to be here with you and the audience.
Excellent. And we're going to talk about one of the most simple but profoundly, I'd almost say life-changing practices that people can do in their life. A practice that can help them regain control of their time, but also to align their values and their priorities with what they truly care about, which is the simple but helpful practice of time blocking.
Time blocking, great.
Yeah. Time blocking is, at its very simplest, about making sure your calendar and your preloaded schedule represents what you care about. And yet most people I spend time with, most people we work with, don't actually do it that well. That's what we're going to talk about, and how to use time blocking to help you get unstuck.
Excellent. Just to clarify, because I think like the term when I first came across it was a bit misleading. But when we talk about time blocking, we're talking about something more than just a time management device or tool, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. On the one hand, it's as simple as actually saying, what do you want to achieve in life, and how do you make sure your time, your plan for how you use your time, represents it. So in that sense, it is a simple time management tool. But on the other hand, it's so much more than that, probably because managing your time is actually about managing your life.
Yeah, that's great.
I do like how Oliver Burkeman in 4,000 Weeks says that we get 4,000 weeks, and that we don't manage time like we manage our money, in the sense of you can manage your money, but like the 45 minutes our listeners are listening to this podcast is 45 minutes of their life they will never get back. The time is your life.
It's a finite resource.
It is a finite resource.
You can't really make more of it.
And actually what you do with your time actually ends up being who you are as a person and the life you live. So in that sense, managing your time is about managing your habits. It's about managing your values, your relationships, and your life. And that's why having some practical skills in this space actually is really important.
Excellent. I like that because I think it's important just to kind of, again, like make the point, this is not just, if you like, this is not just a productivity hack.
You're talking to a productivity consultant, just a productivity.
I never call you a productivity hack.
But managing your calendar, it's not a sexy topic. No one wakes up and says, I'm really excited. Today I get to listen to a podcast about calendar management.
Well, I know one person who does.
Except for me, the productivity hack. Yeah. But seriously, what we do with our time is so important. And if you can pre-think the type of person you want to be, the type of relationship you want to have with your partner or spouse, the type of relationship you want to have with your kids or best friends, the type of actions you want to do at work, and how you want to actually achieve things with your life, these things matter. And so we're going to talk about how to preload your commitments, and we're going to talk about how to actually activate what you want to do in your life using your time.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. So this is a great way or a great tool to help turn intentions into actions.
Absolutely. And in that sense, how does it fit with this broader conversation about getting unstuck?
Yeah, so last week we talked about acting our way into new ways of thinking. So in relation to unstuck, we talked about trying to land on one tiny habit that you can perform consistently, that is going to be in accord with getting unstuck in that domain of life that you've identified. Yeah. And so this relates, as in like this idea of time blocking relates to that, because one thing that you may time block, as in make a future commitment with yourself and your calendar to dedicate time towards something, the thing that you're dedicating time towards may be that tiny habit. Makes sense?
And in fact, if for many of us, if we don't think about when and where we're going to do that tiny habit, well, then it never becomes a reality.
It just remains an intention, like a good intention.
Yeah. And so this is the secret of, I suppose time blocking in that sense is the activation of your good intentions, like you've said. So how do we forge into new action, which is where we're at in the pod course, but how do we use practical skills to help us get there?
Yeah.
So if you stick around to the end of the episode, we're going to get very practical and give you some skills to do a time audit and to start doing a regular repetitive time block in your own life in line with what you truly want to achieve. So Matt, we are now up to episode 8 in our pod course. We call them a pod course, not a podcast, because we're actually trying to take people from, A to Z, or as I said before, maybe A to B or C, but we want to take you somewhere. And that's why we structure our episodes in a very specific way. And we're structuring it around an acrostic called the SHIFT framework. Maybe inspired by our tagline, Shift the Way You Live and Work. But the S stands for select a domain, so pick an area of life you want to change. H stands for harness your strengths, so focus on what works and not what doesn't. The I is imagine multiple paths, so imagine multiple ways to change if you feel stuck. The F, which is where we're at now, is about forging ahead with action. Basically, we're at the pointy end of the stick, which is if you don't do something different, you can't get unstuck. So how do you change your actions? And next week, we're going to talk about travel alongside others. And we're going to wrap it up with a really interesting activity around picking the goal for the very last episode.
Oh, cool.
But what was our activity from last week?
A great question, Dan. So we asked people to consider and land on one, we call them tiny habits. So one tiny action that they can implement, again, hopefully consistent with the area or domain of life that they want to get unstuck in. And this tiny behavioral change has to be able to be undertaken consistently and ideally like over the long term to help form a habit that is going to move people in the right direction.
So what did you end up doing?
Yeah, so just by way of a quick reminder, the area that I'm trying to get unstuck in is consistently letting people down by overcommitting to different causes, events, that kind of thing. I need to get unstuck in terms of just, being able to better manage my time and particularly commitments for the sake of other people primarily. So we talked a bit about that, and one tiny habit that I'm hoping to implement. See what you think about this, because I don't think it's ideal, but I think anyway. I'll let you decide. I want to, when someone asks me to sign up to something, to do something, to commit to something, I want to get into the habit of just being able to say to them politely and simply, "Can I get back to you in 24 hours?" I want to be able to just buy some breathing room and space. Now, I know this, so let's not take this to extremes. Like if we were already hanging out, we have a break between podcast episodes and say, "Hey, do you want to grab a coffee?" I don't want to say, "Sorry, Dan, just give me 24 hours and I'll be able to come back to you."
But anything that's actually a commitment.
Anything that's, substantial. Yeah.
It's a great strategy.
Okay.
I've actually got an ebook, which you obviously haven't read, called How to Say No for a Greater Yes. And one of the 8 strategies for how to say no like a pro is the let me get back to you strategy, which is exactly what you just said.
Yeah, look, so I'm not claiming that was like an original idea.
No, I'm not.
You've probably been some kind of subconscious influence.
It from someone else as well. No, but it's a great idea because what you're doing is you're preloading a response. Okay?
Yes.
Now, obviously, you can change the wording, but essentially, you're buying yourself time.
Yeah.
Stephen Covey talks about wanting to create a gap between stimulus and response. So someone says, "Hey, Matt, I'd really, do you want to come and join this underwater hockey club?" And you're immediately going, "I'd love to do that, but hey, I need some time to think about it. Let me get back to you for 24 hours." So it becomes a habitualized response. And then you can now think from your prefrontal cortex, not your kind of relational, fear-based limbic system. And actually,
I was going to say my overabundant, generous, passionate heart, but sure, let's go with fear-based limbic. Let's go with fear-based limbic system.
Your overabundant heart. Does that make sense?
You old romantic. Yeah.
That's great. And it's a tiny habit, although you'll have to practice it.
Yes. Yeah, I will. I'd say it's simple, but not easy.
I think that's a really good example.
Okay.
And well done.
Okay, we'll see how we go.
So look, for mine, I've been stuck in an area around, it's all of the internal stuff, which is super hard to explain on a podcast because a lot of the changes are about the way I'm framing the world and my actions in it. But,
Yeah.
I suppose learning how to express my faith, my belief in a new context for me. And look, the tiny habit, I suppose, I don't know, it's simple, it's not easy, but I've been thinking a lot about letting go and just letting go of the need to know what the future looks like in terms of how I express my faith and spirituality, and not having to control it, but I suppose have faith that, using my language, that God is with me and that I'm being guided along the way. And so there was actually a poem that I read from Dr. Julia Vidal. She has this tiny poem and she wrote it about faith, but also about the passing of her husband. It said, I surrender my breath to you, God of the universe. That was a simple poem. And since I've been doing cold showers every morning and I actually am a bit breathless in the shower, I've actually been saying that. The cold shower is not a tiny habit, but the actual saying, I surrender, I don't know, my worry about this work, or I surrender my fear about money, or I surrender my need to control this situation. I've been saying that little kind of poem every day, and I've been finding it really helpful just to start each day with giving up something that I could be attached to and hold on to. And that's also helped me feel a bit less stuck in terms of being okay with not knowing the way forward in terms of my faith journey right now. Mm-hmm. But still an act of faith.
Yeah, that's great. Love the fact, obviously, in terms of the mechanics, and I know it's a pretty, it could be like seen as a bit of a, a crude word when we're talking about something like spirituality, but the mechanics of having that associated or bundled with what?
See, I even bundle my
it's true. Well, I mean, you have the shower, right? So it's just, it's a nice, so you're going to have a shower every day.
Yeah. And so it's cold, so I'm literally breathless.
Yeah, it's
so
like
I surrender my breath.
It's a hyperventilated prayer. It's great.
And then I surrender other things.
Yeah, and it's short. So like in terms of this, because if you had to memorize something, and it was difficult, that'd be, again, that wouldn't kind of meet the simple criteria that it wouldn't be tiny anymore. In terms of the consistency or the frequency, it's daily, which is great.
Yeah, and look, it's a different spiritual practice, as you might use that term, than some of the other ones I've used in the past.
Yep.
And it's helping me maybe rediscover fresh ways to express my love for God, like a love for others.
Yeah.
In that sense,
I think plenty of people will be able to relate to that. Maybe not precisely, but much like we talked about in season 2, I think once you hit a particular stage of life, so to speak, you realise that there's so much stuff that you've got to let go of, particularly. So that theme of control, use the word control to start off with, really, 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 really pertinent. And like I'm sure we talked about this in season 2, it's like either kind of willingly give that up, lay it down, shrug it off, whatever, or chances are it's going to be forcibly taken away from me eventually.
That's true. I'm good at picking stuff up.
Yeah.
I don't find it as easy to let go. So it's a good practice for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, diving into today's subject matter, time blocking. I've read a little bit about it. I've heard it referred to as time blocking as well as time boxing.
Different terms.
Yeah. Different terms. Yeah. But I'm really keen to find out whether you think they refer to the same thing, just like two ways of kind of describing it. And I've kind of had a go at it as well, like personally, with some success. But I'd be really keen to hear you give us your kind of comprehensive overview of it. Well, I would, because you spend more time in that space. You are like a productivity expert, and I know, more to the point, you've been a adherent to it for some time now.
Yeah, so I definitely time block myself. I'd say where my expertise comes in. Because look, it's not that complex an idea. Mm-hmm. When you want to do something that matters, make sure it's in your calendar. It kind of is as simple as that. There's lots of different terms and there's lots of different words, but let's not make something more complex than it is. Just like, exercise, that means you need to kind of get your heart rate up. Just similarly, like time blocking, you need to actually work out what you want to achieve and put it in your calendar. Where I think my expertise comes in is I've actually coached and trained thousands of senior leaders, and I've seen what they do. And this is where I think it's fascinating, the difference between those who time block and those who don't. So let's talk about time blocking at work, and then maybe we'll talk about pre-commitments later on and how it relates to life, because this isn't just about work, but work does matter. There was a study by William Pounds in MIT, which I really like, and he was he was looking at managers and leaders and trying to ask, well, how do you determine what matters, or how do you determine what priorities are in your work life? And so we asked lots of CEOs and executives, okay, well, what do you need to achieve in the next year, or what risks do you need to solve? And William Pounds and his team basically said that most senior leaders can give you a pretty accurate description of what the future looks like, what they need to achieve, okay? But then the team looked at the calendars and spoke to the executive assistants of those leaders and looked at how they use their time. And I think, I'm not quoting verbatim, but William Pounds said, on no occasion did any manager's calendar or did any manager use their time in a way that represented what they said mattered. Okay. And I've spoken to thousands of leaders now and shared that study, and almost everyone agrees that we say this is what matters to us. If I did this at work, if I built this culture, if I spent time with these people, if I wrote these documents or wrote this book, then that would truly make a difference in my work. And then what they do each day is you open up your inbox, you get distracted with Teams or Slack messages, you go from meeting to meeting to meeting, often doing small operational things, and in the tiny slithers of time that you have left, maybe the time confetti that you have, you try to actually squeeze in what you think are the goals that truly matter to you. And that's how the majority of workers are working at the moment. And it's a complete disaster for how you work. Does that make sense?
It does. And appreciate the term time confetti. You haven't heard that before.
I like time
That's
confetti.
great. That's a keeper.
Increasingly, it is time confetti. Literally, if you look at someone's time and how they click their mouse between Teams messages and email, or how they move from meeting to meeting, there is literally just fragments of time remaining.
That's good.
And so the alternative is to actually say, well, if I have an open, unstructured calendar and all I put in are meetings, well, then you're going to end up with time confetti and you won't actually achieve your goals. What the best leaders do is they time block. Each week, they might say, well, these are the 5 tasks that are most important, that will most represent the longer term goals that I want to achieve. And they work out how much time is required for each of those tasks, maybe 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours, and they put it in their calendar, and they make a meeting with themselves, which is what the time block is. But it's not a vague, 2 hours of time blocking or 2 hours of deep work, as Cal Newport might say. You'd say, I've got 2 hours to write the summary of episode 9 of the Spacemakers, season 3. It's very distinct and specific. And so therefore, when you hit that particular period of time for that day, that's what you need to do. Just like if you're in a meeting with others, you're in a meeting with yourself. And obviously there's skills and practices to achieve those time blocks, but the very fact that you've got it in your calendar is a good start. And if it's not in your calendar, well, then it's not a priority. It's not a simple practice, particularly when people don't have any space in their calendar, but it's a super important one. One practical bit of advice which I've found helpful is most people won't be able to find 2 hours of spare space in their calendar with 1 week's notice, particularly if you're at a senior level. And so therefore, how can I do that task that really matters when it takes me 2 hours of concentrated effort? So therefore, it's probably important to actually work out how much time do you need each week as an approximate in terms of focused, concentrated work. Preload them as a regular recurring time block, 2 hours on a Monday, 2 hours on a Friday, maybe 1 hour on a Thursday. Make it a regular recurring meeting with yourself and just call it deep work or time blocking. But the week before, as you plan those tasks for the week, well, that's when you want to fill those particular blocks with particular activities. But at least you've given yourself the space in the first place by saying these are non-negotiable times. These are meetings, I can't book over them.
So it sounds like kind of like two key criteria from that to take away is number one, when it comes to the particular activity that you're booking the time in for, have a pretty realistic idea as to how long that will take. And number two, for each of those activities, don't keep it vague or general. So I want some idea in my head as to what it will look like once I've finished that activity, like an endpoint, a goal. So it's not open-ended. It's not just I'm going to work, for 2 hours on and just try to make progress on this thing. But at the end of 2 hours, I'm hoping to have hammered out, say, 3,000 words on this bit of creative work that I'm doing, or have like the meeting agenda finished and completed.
Yep. So you've totally smashed both of those examples. I think are really, really true. We really struggle to determine how long things take, and so by time blocking, and regularly committing to how much time things will take, you start to realize how much you underestimate how long tasks take, and therefore you become more accurate in predicting your time. And the second thing is totally breaking it down to a specific goal in a specific time segment. So that's kind of along the tiny habits line as well.
Yeah.
You might have a massive project. What is the next 30 minutes or 1 hour or 1.5 hour chunk of that project, and how can I be committed to completing that in a particular amount of time? So that's what time blocking looks like in a work context. There's lots of different ways to build on that and iterate it, but essentially it's book a meeting with yourself, work out what matters, and make sure that when I look at your calendar, I'll be able to say, hey, this is what matters to Matt, and these are his priorities because they're represented in your calendar in terms of how you use your time.
I will make sure of that.
So Matt, we've got a great quote from the legendary Cal Newport, who we're both a fan of in terms of productivity and his authorship in that space.
He's a time blocker extraordinaire.
He's a time block extraordinaire. I learned a lot from him. But what's one of his quotes about this to finish?
Yeah, so he writes, and this may actually come from his time blocker.
I think so.
His time blocker, Time Block Planet, yeah. He writes, instead of trying to generally be productive, you partition your time into blocks and assign specific work to them. This critical shift from managing tasks to managing time can massively increase the amount of useful work you accomplish.
And that's the shift, isn't it? You do need a task management tool, but we also need to actually start to shape and predict our time, especially in whirlwind environments where people say they've got no control of their time. But there's really no choice. You either control your time and start to take back control of it, or you end up just at the mercy of whatever time Confetti gives you.
Yeah, that's it. Someone else will control it for you.
All right, so Matt, let's have a pause for a moment and talk about one of our major sponsors, which is Banjo's Bakery Cafes. You like Banjo's, don't you?
Oh, do I what? I love Banjo's. Yeah, I've been a long-term fan of their humble mince pie. It's one of my go-tos. Look, and part of me thinks you can divide everyone into one or two categories. Like you're either a party pie person or you're a sausage roll person. You can't really be both. I've always been a party pie guy, straight up. But if I was going to break out of that and just I guess live a little, the only sausage roll I'd be happy to eat is a Banjo sausage roll. Seriously.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm feeling bad because I tend to order the spinach and feta. So how sad is that?
Yeah.
But look, I do love Banjo's, and I'm so grateful that they are sponsoring our show. So we're actually here to talk about their franchises and the opportunity that you can have if you want to be a franchisee.
Yeah, so my understanding is whilst they started in Tassie about 40 years ago, pretty soon they're going to have more franchises outside of Tassie than inside.
Yeah, they're exploding across the mainland. Mainland, people will laugh at us from Tassie. They're across Australia.
Let them laugh. Yeah.
And no, but seriously, it's one of the fastest growing bakeries.
Yeah.
It has more kind of product lines than most bakeries. And the cool thing is they have this head office with amazing support. They actually have a team of professionals who go out and look at where the best stores might be. They find locations, they help kind of kit it out. But basically, they've got more locations in mind than owners. And so they're looking for people who want a career change.
Okay, interesting. So if I was in that market, would I have to have any kind of prior baking experience?
No bakery experience. No baking experience. Basically, they're looking for hardworking people who have a little bit of capital, obviously, behind them because you're going to own the store. People who have wanted to see change, who want to run their own business, work for themselves, and actually make an impact in the community.
Cool.
So
people want some more dough?
Make some more dough, quite literally. Oh, that's a bad pun, Matt. So if you're interested in being a franchisee or even just finding out what it might look like, well, then check the link out in the show notes. And actually, there's a 10% discount if you actually become a franchisee using that link. So just have a look at it.
Wow, so it's only 10% off the franchise.
Off of the franchise fees.
Okay, that's
so it's a
big deal.
huge sponsorship kind of connection. And so, yeah, look, if you want a successful store, you want to work for yourself, and you want to have some of that dough.
And access to bottomless pies. It's like, wow.
And access to bottomless pies.
Yeah.
Well, then check out the link. But thanks again, Banjo's, for sponsoring the show.
Yeah, thank you, Banjo's.
Yeah, so Matt, let's talk about time blocking, not just in the work context, but let's talk about it in terms of life. Because if you're stuck and you need to make a shift in your habits, well, obviously it's not just going to be in a work context. So how do you use time blocking to make space for what really matters?
One quick caveat, please hang around to the end of this conversation and discussion, because near the end we are going to be kind of covering stuff like spontaneous time and the idea of freedom and all that kind of stuff as well. Because I know this can sound almost a little bit kind of, to a personality like mine, like thinking about time blocking in your personal life can sound like a little bit restrictive. To start off with.
Very structured,
very
rigid.
Yeah,
because like, it's bad enough in work to feel like you have to actually kind of segment your time into specific fragments, or to be incredibly planned in how you use every moment of your day. Like, that's hard at work, but we don't want that for your life.
So I want to start, and again, this largely comes from the work of Nia Isle, the author, speaker, productivity coach.
Yeah, I met him in Sydney a few months ago.
Yeah.
So there's a great interview where he talks about how to get undistracted.
Yeah. And he cites the famous tale of Odysseus, or Ulysses, depending upon which translation you read.
I don't know which translation I've read. But yeah.
So Odysseus, like a Greek hero from some of their founding myths. He's on the way back from the Trojan War, trying to make his way home to Ithaca and be reunited with his wife and child. And so on the way, he and his homeboys, like they're on the ship, so they're sailing, right? And they're going past this famous spot that he's familiar with. And the spot is famous because it is this little bit of coastland is inhabited by the infamous sirens. So this is where we get the term siren song in popular culture.
Yeah. Al McPherson, I saw that movie.
yeah, no doubt. So this is where we get the idea of siren songs in pop culture. So these sirens, I think female, had beautiful voices, and they'd sing these songs. And these songs were so powerful to passing sailors that they would like literally always, without exception, jump overboard and swim to the sirens and face their doom there, like they'd be killed on the rocks, or they'd steer their entire ship towards the sirens to get closer and closer to the songs, and they'd be dashed on the rocks, etc.
Those evil rock songs.
Yeah. That's right, evil rock music, right? So Ulysses, he's familiar with all this, right? And so the first thing he does is tell his crew, here's what you're going to do. You're going to put like a bunch of wax in your ear so you can't hear this. Because if you hear it, again, we're going to be steered there, we're going to die. But Ulysses, again, like canny character that he is also thinking, this would be a great opportunity to have my cake and eat it. I reckon I can afford to hear the song and yet not be like lured to my death if I get these guys in advance to bind me to the mast of the ship, and they keep on sailing straight past whilst I'll be able to enjoy the siren song without jumping overboard. Yeah. So he works out what his values are, like what he wants. He wants to be able to hear the song, but at the same time, he doesn't want to be mastered and lured to his death from it.
So he predicts the problem in advance.
He predicts the problem in advance, and also commits to a solution that is going to limit him in the future, but it's going to allow him to be spared.
He includes others in the plot as well.
He does. Yeah, he does. So they bind him up. They go past, he hears it, no one else can, and he's begging his men, like, untie me. So, he's feeling that conflict, like that tension, but they obey him and they don't, and they all pass through it in safety. But he got what he wanted. He heard the song.
So what does that have to do with time
Come
blocking?
on, I trust our audience. I reckon they've read between the lines here, right? They are a smart bunch. So the idea is, again, with time blocking, you are working out where you want to go, in advance. So again, you're committing to some path that's going to involve action, maybe even some tiny habits. But you're also realizing that in the future, there's every chance you're going to get distracted. Yeah, so you'll be pulled off task.
Yeah, there's part of you that doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, part of you
wants to do something else.
Yeah, that's right. Particularly if it's like relatively if it's going to involve some pain. Yeah, and so Nia says, like Ulysses, what you do in your diary is you make a pre-commitment that there and like sometime your future self at that time has already decided, you have preloaded what it is that you're going to do. So immediately you've carved out the time, and immediately if you stick to that, then you're not overthinking it. Again, because you've already done the hard work of how am I going to spend this time, and you've made some kind of commitment to yourself by putting it in the diary. But he also goes like a step above and beyond that, right? So just putting it in your diary, blocking out the time, that's a good start. But he says, like, and again, he kind of like divvies up all the goals that I'm going for are either goals to be less distracted by something, or I want to get more involved in something. So there's something I want to develop, or there's a relationship that I want to invest in my personal life. So think hobbies, think relationships,
Yeah, so he calls them distraction and traction.
And tractions,
right? So distraction is what you don't want, and traction is what you do
want. Yeah, that's right. So moving towards more and more traction and moving away from distraction. So he says, you can make these time commitments to yourself. So you can time block both to do things that will help you avoid distraction and also things that are going to enhance traction and take you further towards the things that you actually want to focus on.
So can you give me an example?
Say like we're working on a podcast together, and so
For a hypothetical?
Yeah, for a hypothetical, right? And so I could say, hey Dan, listen, just let me do this remotely from home by myself, right? And I'll work on this podcast episode. And I know, right? Because I'm highly distractible. The drop of a hat, right? Just any shiny new novel thing get me off track. So I should time block. So that's a good start. So I time block. I put the time in my calendar, 2 hours to work on podcast. The smart play then, to avoid distraction, would be to add to that, do this with Dan at his house in the same room.
That's why you keep visiting me.
That's
so
why,
we
yeah.
can actually work together. Oh, that's
Yes,
good.
yeah.
Stop being distracted.
It's not because you're great coffee. So yeah, so that way there's a commitment that I made to myself, a pre-commit. There's also a social contract, even just if it's unstated, it's implicit, but I've made that with you too, right? So if we're in the same room, I'm not just going to be sitting there mindlessly surfing the net. It's going to be you and me talking and working in real time. So that helps me avoid distraction, that kind of pre-commitment. In terms of like traction, if there's a relationship in my personal life, so say like I want to spend more time with one of my sons, right? So again, this could sound like relatively kind of mercenary, I guess, or a bit kind of too like rigid. But life's busy. He's getting busier and busier. The older he gets, more hobbies and blah, blah, blah. I'm getting busy too. So I think, okay, I'm going to preload my calendar. So make a prior commitment with him to spend time with him, hopefully, for the sake of making it easy, on a regular, consistent, same time and basis.
Yeah, okay. So what you want to do is I want more time with my son. Well, we live together, but just because we're under the same roof, it doesn't mean we're going to have great quality time on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I'm going to think about, I'm assuming, what type of activities
Yeah.
that he might like with you and vice versa, because he's a teenager.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to work out how can I regularly and
That's
on
right.
a recurring basis
Recurring,
time in
yeah.
my
Yeah.
calendar.
Yeah.
Like a meeting with my son.
Yeah.
It's more about managing yourself, not your son.
Yeah, that's right.
So that you've preloaded the time to even if it's like, hey, I'm spontaneously kicking a footy with you once every week.
Yeah.
You're loading your habits through putting it in your calendar, even if it might not be in your son's calendar.
This is being both kind to myself and him, because it means every week I'm not taking this intention and having to work out how I'm going to fit it in week after week, right?
Which requires mental energy.
Yeah.
Plus also just life gets in the way.
Yeah, that's right. So, and also it means that, say, we've booked in some time regularly on a Wednesday night, 7 to 9. If someone calls me up, a mate calls him up at 6:30 and says, hey, I've got the spare ticket to go see this great band, do you want to come? Then instead of having to think, oh, do I want to? I can think, whoa, hang on.
Let me think about it for 24 hours.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Wow, what kind of guy'd say that? Anyway, yeah, so there and then I could say, look, I've already made this prior commitment to myself and to my son. It's in the calendar, like we're all prepared for it. It just makes it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so look, what I like about the Ulysses Pact and what I like about that idea of pre-commitments from near Isle is, I mean, he hasn't said anything differently in terms of like the practice is still think about what you want to achieve and put it in your calendar on a regular recurring basis in advance. So it's the same idea, right? But I suppose it gives you a deeper sense of why this works and why it matters, particularly in your social life.
Yeah.
I've used time blocking in that sense to like have regular date nights with my wife. I'm not trying to manage my wife. I'm not trying to manage like our relationship. I'm just saying that I know with kids and a busy life, I don't get enough quality time with her. And so we both value quality time with each other. Yeah. So we preload a fortnightly date night, it's the same with, I actually go to banjos with my kids and do a dad day. Kind of I rotate, one child with me every week. So it's that same type of idea.
Dad and donut day.
Dad and donuts.
I think you mean, yeah.
And other kind of things like that. You know, outside of the work realm, obviously.
Yeah. Yes, look, really important, I think, at least this is how I like to kind of, I guess, get clear about what it is in my head. This isn't about generating intentions. So we're not time blocking to generate the intention or the desire to want to.
Motivation.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually helping. So that intention is pre-existing as it should be. We again are just like enhancing the chances of it actually being followed through with and turning into action and behaviour.
Yep. And that's exactly the same in the work context, right? My intention is I want to write great presentations and complete my strategic plan and the projects within it. The difference is if I don't have it as regular time blocks in my calendar, well, then I don't have the ability to find the time to progress those projects, which might take me months, but I have to chip away at them week after week after week. It's exactly the same in that life context. So look, we've talked about the mechanics of time blocking, and we've talked about why it works from a pre-commitment perspective. Maybe we should kind of have a break and reflect on what stands out to people But then let's have a conversation about, well, how does it work from a spontaneity point of view?
Yeah.
And how do we kind of understand this mechanical understanding of shaping our time compared to what does it look like to actually kind of just be?
That'd be good.
Yeah. So let's pause for a moment. Have a reflect on this idea of time blocking. Do you need to time block more at work? Do you need to time block more in life? But probably more importantly, who are the people that you want to spend more time with, or yourself? What type of self-care activities do you need to do on a regular basis to invest in your own life, whether it be exercise or mental health, etc. Or in your work context, what might it look like to actually put time aside for what truly matters in a regular way? Essentially, how might you use time blocking to achieve your goals? So hopefully that was helpful kind of silence to reflect on time blocking for yourself in your work or life context. But there is some pushback, at least for both of us, I think, in terms of overly structuring our time and when to use time blocking to benefit us, but when to be wary of time blocking, I suppose. When I interviewed Nia, who obviously has written a lot on pre-commitments, you helped me write a question and I ran out of time to ask him, and I was kicking myself because I always wanted to, but he literally had to run. So do you want to read the question that we were going to ask Nia, and we might maybe hypothesize what he would have said?
Sure. The question was, your work, as in Nia's work, emphasizes responsibility, making time for your values, reflecting on your week, focusing on inputs over outputs, and living in line with a chosen identity. But is there room beyond scheduled time for serendipity, providence, or benevolent chaos? Could too much precision and rigid time management limit us to only what we can predict or control?
So look, clearly we can't speak for Nia. I would love to know his answer to that question, but tell me about why you wrote the question.
Yeah, because my natural personality just detests, on a bad day, loathes time blocking and being that rigid and timetabled. Like, part of me just I kick against that. So that was certainly, so right from the get-go, I can see its benefit and I value it, and I'm trying to do it more and more, particularly in my work life, but I still don't find it easy. And, reflecting upon that, some of it is personality, but I think a lot of it is this, if I reflect on my own history, for example, I can see these pivotal moments or crossroads or things that I've benefited from, been blessed with and by, that kind of almost just dropped on me. So they involved no intention, no planning, no self-directed control from me.
So there's a spontaneity or a serendipity. Or
Yes.
Life happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't predict it.
Yeah, can't predict it. So,
and like the word detest.
Sorry, it's right.
It's a strong word, right?
Oh, it's hyperbole, right? It was probably some hyperbole.
It's a strong word, so it obviously means that you have strong feelings about the idea of overly controlling or structuring your time. But it sounds like the why behind that, if I've heard you correctly, is that you don't want to miss out on the good, exciting, serendipitous events that life can throw at you by controlling and structuring and mechanizing your time so much that you miss out on the life that happens around it. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, so there's that. And I think the second element, and I'll be a lot more brief this time around, is I don't see, so I personally believe that a lot of what I should be doing with my life is probably going to involve inconveniences and interruptions. So it's going to be primarily people crossing my path, or needs crossing my path that I, again, wouldn't have picked, wouldn't have timetabled, wouldn't have kind of actively sought out. But in hindsight, I've probably benefited and grown from being involved in trying to do what I can to help and assist in those situations with those people and those interruptions, as opposed to trying to do everything in my power to keep them at bay and say, no, look, I've got a better handle as to what's going on here, so I'm going to, again, control my life and my time really rigidly, and start to view those interruptions as just being annoyances.
So I can see that as well, that relationships are by their very nature interruptible, or interrupting, and disruptive and flexible and adaptive. And so how do you give that space for the people who need it when our time's so hard to manage?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's good. You have completely the opposite personality to me, so I find that very helpful to hear what the pushback might be. I've probably come at it at quite a different, like with a different perspective. And for me, I come from completely opposite perspective where I've always loved shaping my time and planning and having tick lists. And like, I suppose that's how I feel. I'm very goal oriented, very task oriented, and also people oriented. So, you know, again, that's the pros and the cons that come with different personality types. We both had a mentor, you know, Darren, who once said that, what do you say? Sometimes the best way to have spontaneity is to plan it. Do you remember him saying that?
Yeah, I remember you remembering that he said that.
He did, and I always found that fascinating because what he was saying is our lives are so busy and our lives are so full that if we don't plan or create space where spontaneity can happen, then we will be so distracted or so interrupted or so full that there won't be the ability to, say, drop something. I don't know. So for someone to ring and say, hey, do you want to hang out tonight? Well, you can't because you're so chaotic or so busy that you can't be spontaneous. So he was suggesting a different type of time blocking, but where you actually create enough white space in your calendar where you can be spontaneous. But that also means you have to be super structured and organised in the time where you work. And that's what I've found. Cal Newport, again, would say that time blocking in an ideal world, let's say a utopian world, shouldn't exist because we shouldn't have the type of work pressures or workflow where we actually have to force ourselves to be rigid and ruthless with our time. But the reality is the world as it is, with AI and with technology and distractibility and with competition, like the demands are so high on the everyday person that if you don't organise your time, you just drown. Like you absolutely just drown in most workplaces, right? So therefore, time blocking is a necessarily evil in that sense because it's an incredibly valuable tool to become ruthlessly productive. To achieve specific tasks and to do meaningful work because you're shaping your time. But then Cal Newport would say, but don't time block your weekends. And don't time block outside of 5 or 6 o'clock or whenever you finish work. So ruthlessly time block the productive task-oriented parts of your life, which then actually gives you the ability to then decompress and to have slow productivity and to be spontaneous around the edges. I think that's the type of approach that works because I think it's a helpful compromise between maybe what you're feeling and what I think about the way I work. For me, because of my personality, if I don't structure my non-work times, I'll drift towards work and tasks because that's my default. You know, if I've got like, give me 2 hours and all I want to do is, I don't know, write something or be productive or start a new organisation. Like this is what I do by default. So I've had to very clearly guard out from Friday night to Saturday night. I call it my digital Sabbath. I wrote about that in my book, Spacemaker. I book a whole 24-hour period each week where I have no devices, no technology, no email. I don't plan anything else within that. It's a planned, unplanned day. And then I wake up and we can do what we feel like because it's a day with no plans. But before I structured the unplanned day, I was always working.
And you're right. Like we're such a great contrast. Like to some degree, like in a perfect world, you'd probably be having to time block, and you would be time blocking less, and I'd be time blocking more. I think that's probably it.
But I think somewhere in the mix between being overly structured and overly spontaneous, there's probably the right mix. But I think time blocking is definitely part of the solution for everyone. So if you're going to forge ahead with action and get unstuck, and if you have intentions of doing something like a habit change, we do think that time blocking is absolutely one of the solutions. Those habits and those intentions need to be represented as regular recurring time blocks in your calendar. Don't overly time block, meaning leave enough margin and enough space where you don't crowd yourself. Otherwise, you might push against your own time blocks and just ignore them. But at the same time, make sure that if Matt or I would look at your calendar, and we won't do this, but if we were,
I don't want to. Just for the record, I've got no inclination to look at your calendar, man.
If we were, you would want to be able to say, hey, this person values exercise, or this person seems to value time with their friends, or this person seems to value time writing or creating content because their calendar, their time represent it. And the point is because your time is your life and you become what you do on a regular basis. So hopefully that's been helpful. There's lots to think about in that space. But let's move on to the next actions.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was food for thought for me too. All right, Dan, here's what we're hoping people will do this week. And obviously, it's all about time blocking, really practicing time blocking. But again, really important to remember the big idea or the big goal of time blocking isn't just like calendar management or even just simply time management. We're hoping to encourage people to take a couple of steps to ensure that those intentions that they actually want to see kind of, I guess, like carried out in their lives, and those intentions are going to be, again, connected to their values. We want to make sure that these are connected to how they're actually spending their time.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's a tool, and that's all it is.
Yep.
You know, it's not a magical tool, but it's a tool to help manage yourself,
Yeah.
who you want to be and what you want to do. And so, so how do we recommend people start?
Yeah, so we've got like a 3-step process. So number one, we'd like you to find a place where you won't be disturbed. Maybe it's a cafe, maybe it's just like at home when everyone else is out, and spend some time going through your calendar or your diary, like whichever you use, as it currently stands. Yeah, and look at it, examine it through the lens of what does my current calendar or diary say or reflect about my values and about my intentions. Yeah. So for example, if someone like didn't know me and they just picked this up, or God forbid, if Dan C was looking over my shoulder, looking at my calendar, what would he say is reflected in terms of what's important to me based on this? Yeah, that's number one. So,
and it's basically is your time representative of the things you care about.
That's it. So it's like an audit, to use another
time audit.
To use another great word that people love. It's an audit.
Very exciting word.
It's an audit.
But don't spend too long on it. Just scan the last few months. Say honestly, how much does my calendar represent what I care about?
Yeah. So but don't dodge anything that comes out of it either, right?
Sure.
Because it could be a bit confronting, okay? So that's number one. And then number two, go back to that, again, one area or domain of life that you're hoping to shift just a little bit. So now we've talked, for a couple of weeks, a couple of episodes about behavior, actions. So take like that tiny habit that you've hopefully already identified that's, come out of the pathways exercise before that, and schedule it. Think about how you can schedule that into your calendar.
Yeah. Now the only caveat is, we talked about tiny habits, and I wouldn't necessarily schedule tiny habits if there are other triggers. So, for example, remember, whenever I have a shower, I do my kind of letting go activity.
Yeah.
I probably don't even put shower in my calendar because it's so habitual, and my calendar doesn't start until I head to work. So sometimes there's a trigger or a habit stack that works.
Yeah.
But the point is the same. What do you want to change?
Yeah.
And then what are the time blocks that need to represent?
Sure.
That?
So like we're talking about something that's probably like going to be a bit more kind of new and standalone.
Yeah. Or it just takes a bit of time.
Then lastly, so 3 out of 3, actually put it into your calendar or your diary. Again, like we want it to be consistent. We want it to be realistic. As you said right at the very start when you talked about time blocking, you need to give it the actual time, whether it's 5 minutes, 15 minutes up. Yeah. So again, like be realistic about how much time it's going to take.
Yeah. And look, the magic of it is just make sure that whatever you put in your calendar represents the domain you want to shift. So if you're wanting to shift a relational domain, well, make sure that you've got some type of relational time block there where you're connecting with the people you care about most. If it's a self-care or a health domain, well, make sure you've got time to walk or exercise or do yoga or whatever it is in your calendar, ideally with other people or maybe with yourself. If it's about money, make sure you have some type of saving goal. Make sure I do my weekly bank kind of tasks on this particular time block, and then you might refer to some other kind of habits related to your finances. Does that make sense? It could be anything.
Yeah.
Just make sure that the time block will help naturally or logically move you forward in the domain you feel stuck in. One domain, one shift to transform one area over this podcast.
Bonus question. What about if the whole idea of a calendar is just completely unfamiliar? I can't even spell the word. Like where do you start again if you think, man, I wake up, I roll out of bed, I go to work, I do the thing. Like maybe you've got like a digital calendar at work, maybe, but it's very rarely like utilized.
Yeah. Look, if you don't have a calendar, you need a calendar. If you're an analog person and you'll do paper but you won't do digital, well then go to the newsagent and buy a paper calendar and start. You've got to start somewhere. Look, if you're on Outlook for work, then use your Outlook calendar. If you're on an iPhone, well then use an iCal calendar. Like don't get hung up on researching tools. A calendar is just a diagrammatical representation of your time. The key is that you start thinking about how you use that time and learning to book appointments or calendar appointments with yourself for specific activities. Start today and then learn more about calendar management over time.
Cool.
Okay, so Matt, we're nearly at the end of our pod course, and the last 2 episodes will be great. We're going to talk about traveling alongside others next week and the importance of accountability and support in a community. And then we're going to do something interesting about the goal of the goal in the last episode to pull it all together. So you won't want to miss out on that. But until next time, make space, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.